Not that there's any pressure.
No, no pressure at all. There's only 750 people here today. I'm only kidding. You want to say to introduce, Keith?
No, it's good.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay, well, I'm Keith, and alas, I'm not anyone famous. The only place that you might know me from is the group and that post that went viral everywhere in the course community thanks to Lloyd sharing it. It was about Keith being the ego. So that's it. There was a lady that commented on the event page of this talk, and she thought that she got a clue from Stephanie's description about who the guest speaker was. She was so excited, and now, God love her, she must be so disappointed. Okay.
I think not.
A few apologies to begin with. As you can hear, I have an Irish accent, and I'm afraid in Ireland we sometimes speak a bit fast for North Americans to understand us. So I'm going to make a real concerted effort to speak slowly. Also, apologies in advance that your ego is going to hate my talk today. So my advice is, don't be an ego. Watch your ego with Jesus. Be the decision-making mind, holding hands with him. Be the still, alert presence that can watch your ego without judging it, and you'll love it, or at least not hate it, hopefully. Okay, so let's begin.
Yeah.
Your desire to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit is what's preventing you from hearing it. The fact that you think it's important to hear something being said to you is preventing you from hearing anything, because you're wanting the echo of a voice instead of the actual voice. And it's impossible to hear the echo until you hear the actual voice speak first. And furthermore, we don't want to hear the actual voice of the Holy Spirit. And that's the actual problem. A Course in Miracles is not the voice of Jesus as a manifestation of the Holy Spirit. It is the echo of the voice of the Holy Spirit. And Helen only heard that echo because she could hear the actual voice. When the Son of God had a psychotic break from reality and thought himself separate from God, his mind became split. There was the voice of the ego, and there was the voice of the Holy Spirit. And the ego was the part of the mind that wanted to believe in the separateness. And the Holy Spirit was the memory of heaven, and therefore the knowledge that separateness is utterly impossible. And the decision-making mind of the Son of God had to choose between these two conflicting ideas in his mind. Kenneth Wapnick describes the Son of God as being like a judge, hearing the arguments of two different attorneys before making his decision on the court case. And it's a perfect analogy. So the Son of God, as the judge, lets the ego speak first and make his case. And the ego says, wow, you really did it. You've accomplished the impossible. You've separated from God. You're a me. You're special. And now you can do whatever you want. And then the Son of God, as the judge, turned to the Holy Spirit to hear his argument. And the Holy Spirit said, absolutely nothing. He looked straight through the judge like he wasn't even there. As the memory of heaven, the Holy Spirit merely radiated the unfathomable love, sacredness, and stillness of God. He said absolutely nothing because there was nothing to say, and there was nobody to say it to. By his mere silent presence, he was the utter contradiction and correction of everything the ego just said. And we know the rest of the story. The Son of God wanted to be acknowledged as special and separate. So he chose against the peace, the love, the stillness, and the oneness of the Holy Spirit. And he chose the ego's lie. So here's what we need to understand. The Holy Spirit doesn't say anything because there is nothing to say and nobody to say it to. The Holy Spirit doesn't do anything because there is nothing to be done. Nothing happened. He simply proves by his presence that everything else is a lie. The only purpose the Holy Spirit has is to correct, with his mere presence, the mistaken choice for the ego's lie. It's important to understand here that the Son of God could easily and happily have melted back into the heart of God. There would be no fear in that because he knows he's psychotic by experiencing the impossible, and the Holy Spirit, as the memory of the peace, love, and unity of God, is simply the cure. But he just wants to give separateness a go. And so he chooses to remain psychotic by repressing the Holy Spirit's cure. It's a decision to play let's pretend by burying the truth. But now is where a terror we cannot begin to fathom begins. By choosing against the Holy Spirit as the memory of the impossibility of being separate from God, God's Son now believes his psychosis is reality. He doesn't know he's chosen to play let's pretend. He now 100% believes he actually is a separate entity. And that means he has to believe he has destroyed heaven's oneness. He has brought down heaven. He has murdered God. Here is where intolerable guilt is born. And here is born the unimaginable terror of God's retribution. I've murdered God, but he's God. He won't stay down. And he's coming after me to take back the life I murdered him for. I will be destroyed to restore heaven's oneness. Now, all this is psychosis. Jesus tells us very beautifully that none of this actually happened by saying, not one note in heaven's symphony was missed. Heaven's symphony is the peace and stillness that surpasses all understanding, and the exquisite love and oneness of God. But God's Son is now utterly psychotic. And unless we grasp the magnitude of the guilt and intolerable terror, we will never understand the metaphysics of the Course, or why we do not want to hear the Holy Spirit's voice, which is that sacred silence and stillness we've rejected. We must grasp the terror of the love and light and stillness of God, which is now perceived as death. If we are ever to understand what this world is, God's creation cannot remain in his mind where the presence of the Holy Spirit, just by being there, threatens death to his individual existence and specialness. The peace, love, and stillness of God that surpasses all understanding is now the most terrifying thing imaginable. God's Son now makes up a world, projects it out of his mind, projects himself into that dream world, and gives himself amnesia that he ever had a mind. And this is to ensure he never returns there, where the peace, stillness, and love of the Holy Spirit could destroy him. That's the Holy Spirit taken care of. We made this world to exclude him and keep him out, and it does. The primary purpose of this dream is to keep God and the Holy Spirit as the memory of God out. We made the dream world loud and noisy to forget the terrifying silence of the Holy Spirit's answer. And even more importantly, we put non-stop noise in our heads, incessant thoughts, self-talk, and problems. So we never, ever hear the stillness or feel the love. And now there's the intolerable guilt to take care of. There is only one thing the ego wants now that the Holy Spirit is gone, and that is to cling to an individual existence, but be without the intolerable guilt. It does not care about the quality of that individual existence at all. It just wants the guilt to stop. So God's Son fragments himself into trillions and trillions of individual lives, and each life will be without its guilt by scripting itself an existence where it will see its guilt in everything and everyone else except itself. It scripted horrors such as rape and murder, child abuse and war, genocide, corrupt governments and institutions. It scripted disease and famine. It scripted COVID and cancer. It scripted all the ways God's Son could suffer as the innocent victim instead of know himself as the victimizer of God. So he could project his guilt out onto his victimizers to be rid of it. This is our dream. It could have been anything we wanted it to be, but it had to be a dream of guilt. Because guilt is the proof that the separation happened and my existence is real. It just can't be my guilt. That's intolerable. So it had to be a dream of being victimized by parents, teachers, bosses, co-workers, authorities, friends, lovers, germs, bacteria, genes, accidents, crime, war, terrorism, famine, sickness, and death. The only tolerable existence was to be the victim of everything and everyone, so we could see our guilt in everything and everyone else except ourselves. Anything except feel the guilt in ourselves. And it's all psychosis. It's all made up. It's just a big deluded virtual reality game we've forgotten we're playing, so we can cling to the delusion of a separate existence from God without the guilt of believing we had to bring down heaven to have it, and without our terror of God or his general, the Holy Spirit, destroying us to restore God's oneness. The Course tells us there is only one problem and one solution. The problem is the decision to be separate. The solution is to choose against that mistaken decision. Okay, to recap, the Holy Spirit says and does nothing. If he did, he would believe in the separation and he would be insane. This dream life of ours was actually designed to keep the Holy Spirit out. And the Holy Spirit doesn't believe in it. The Holy Spirit doesn't do anything or fix anything ever in the dream. He doesn't believe in it. The script of victimization we wrote for ourselves is our own script. The Holy Spirit does not have a script. His script is the ego's script forgiven. His script is only that you live out your own script of victimization in all its horror and glory without feeling victimized, without seeing guilt in your scripted victimizers. That's it. He helps you forgive the horrors of your own script, nothing more. Now, what does that mean? It's meaningless to ask the Holy Spirit to do something or fix something in your dream. He doesn't believe in the dream you concocted to traumatize yourself. There is nothing the Holy Spirit wants done in the dream, and nothing he will ever make happen in the dream. That would make the dream real, and it's not. And it would make the Holy Spirit insane, and he's not. You cannot ask the Holy Spirit, should I take job A or job B? The Holy Spirit doesn't believe in jobs. You cannot ask him, should I do this or should I do that? He doesn't believe in this and that. That's why as egos, we hated the real Holy Spirit at the illusory separation from God. And that's why we still hate the real Holy Spirit. He won't make the errors real. And that's why we don't want the real Holy Spirit. Remember, we made this world to keep the real Holy Spirit out, because his mere presence means I don't exist and all my problems are actually made up. What we want is a genie, a pretend Holy Spirit that will respond to me as an ego, that will make errors and grievances real and tell me how to fix them so I can be happy, even though I abandoned God and want to be separate. One who will acknowledge me and tell me how to change the world instead of changing my mind about the world exactly as it is and seeing it guiltless. When I say to the genie Holy Spirit, look at the terrible thing they're doing out there, what should I do? My ego, in its Halloween costume, as the Holy Spirit says to me, you're right, that's terrible. And I'm going to give you a mission now to fix it. And you can tell everyone I gave you this mission so they know how special you are and you can feel like the lovely special ego you are. If the Holy Spirit cares about me as a person, then there is a me. And that's what our ego wants this course to be about. When you ask the Holy Spirit, which job should I take? What you're saying is, please help me. I believe that I'm separate. And I want you, as the voice of truth, to come into my illusion that I made up to keep you out and tell me which illusory choice is better for me. I need my job to make me happy so I can triumph over God by having my illusions make me happy, despite the fact that I true heaven's love and happiness in God's face. That's what we're saying. And the only part of that statement the Holy Spirit responds to is, please help me. I believe that I'm separate. I'd like to read you something from the Quiet Answer in chapter 27. All questions asked within this world are but a way of looking, not a question asked. A question asked in hate cannot be answered because it is an answer in itself. A double question asks and answers, both attesting the same thing in different form. The world asks but one question. It is this: of these illusions, which of them is true? Which one establishes peace and offers joy? And which can bring escape from all the pain of which this world is made? Whatever form the question takes, its purpose is the same. It asks but to establish sin is real, and answers in the form of preference. Which sin do you prefer? That is the one that you should choose. The others are not true. What can the body get that you would want the most of all? It is your servant and also your friend. But tell it what you want and it will serve you lovingly and well. And this is not a question, for it tells you what you want and where to go for it. It leaves no room to question its beliefs, except that what it states takes questions form. A pseudo question has no answer. It dictates the answer even as it asks. Thus is all questioning within the world a form of propaganda for itself. Thus is all questioning in the world a form of propaganda for itself. Which illusion is true? Which illusion is better? Which illusion will substitute for the love of God that I've thrown away and make me happy regardless? What should I do to seek to change the world instead of changing my mind about it? Remember, there is only one problem in the world and one solution. The problem is the desire and the decision to be separate. The solution is to choose against the separateness so you can join with the Holy Spirit's love and peace. Only the love, peace, and stillness matters. That's the biggest mistake course students make about guidance. Nobody wants to go anywhere near the real Holy Spirit to be told their problems are all made up. Nobody wants to quieten the noise in their head that is actually there to keep the still small voice of the Holy Spirit out. Just see how long you can sit in stillness and quiet before your ego fills your mind back up with the noise. The noise rushes in to keep the Holy Spirit's love and stillness from undoing your separateness and guilt. That stillness is terrifying to the ego. What we want is for our pretend genie Holy Spirit to shout over the noise. So it's the biggest mistake course students make today, and that was the same mistake students of the course were making 1 year after the course was published. And it's the reason Jesus dictated the Song of Prayer pamphlet to Helen. Even Helen was still inclined to try to use Jesus as a genie. And the Song of Prayer answers this definitively. The pamphlet is a correction of the mistake we all want to make with the course. So, just from the Song of Prayer, the form of the answer, if given by God, will suit your need as you see it. This is merely an echo of the reply of his voice. The real sound is always a song of thanksgiving and love. You cannot then ask for the echo. It is the song that is the gift. Along with it come the overtones, the harmonics, the echoes, but these are secondary. In true prayer, you hear only the song. All the rest is merely added. You have sought first the kingdom of heaven, and all else has indeed been given you. The secret of true prayer is to forget the things you think you need. To ask for the specific is much the same as to look on sin and then forgive it. Also, in the same way, in prayer, you overlook your specific needs as you see them and let them go into God's hands. There they become your gifts to him, for they tell him that you would have no gods before him, no love but his. What could his answer be but your remembrance of him? Can this be traded for a bit of trifling advice about a problem of an instant's duration? God answers only for eternity. But still all little answers are contained in this. So don't ask for specifics. It's the same as forgiving sin after you've made it real. Don't ask for specifics. They are a form of propaganda for the separation from God and the ego's lies. If you ask for specifics, you will only hear your ego telling you what you want to hear and think it's the Holy Spirit. And then it will just feed your specialness as an ego that you think you're hearing him. So what's Jesus telling us about how to know what to do? He's saying you listen to the song of the Holy Spirit, which is only love and peace and stillness. You join with the Holy Spirit. And then you'll know what to do. You won't have to think about it. As Gloria Wapnick would say, you become thunk. Loving and effective action will just flow through you without you having to think about it. If you don't know what to do, it's only because you're choosing to be separate from the Holy Spirit. You're trying to make a decision as an ego. Now, this is crucial. The knowing what to do is not the voice of the Holy Spirit. It is the echo of his voice. It is a side effect of his voice. And it's not the least bit important. If you think it's important, you're asking for the echo when you haven't heard the voice. You're asking for a few notes of the song instead of listening to the song itself. You want answers instead of the love, but it's the love you want. You can't have anything without it, and anything that comes from it is insignificant compared to it. Only the joining with love and stillness matters. What you do will be to simply act in a way that is the most loving and effective for everyone in the situation. You will do so without guilt, judgment, conflict, indecision, fear, or anger. But what you know or say or do is just what happens in the dream. You must want only the love, and the insignificant dream bits will follow. You cannot ask for the echo of the voice. Jesus tells us it will not work. That means the only reason I am confused about what to do is because I'm trying to make a decision as an ego. I'm choosing not to join with the real Holy Spirit, and instead I'm praying to my ego's pretend Holy Spirit genie to tell me what to do as an ego. And if I get an answer, it will just be my ego answering me back with what I think I want to hear. Then, maybe, when I look back in the future, I will think it's the right decision, and I'll think my pretend Holy Spirit genie is amazing. Or maybe I won't think it's the right decision, and I'll be angry because the course doesn't work. The Holy Spirit doesn't engage with egos. The course tells us the ego and the Holy Spirit can't communicate with one another. It can only engage with the decision-making part of our mind, which can watch our ego without being the ego or judging the ego. Now, the problem with that love in our mind is that we're terrified of it. Okay, so when we are in the real world, like Jesus was, our eyes will see the exact same world as now, but we will have projected no guilt onto it. And so we judge nothing. Our eyes will still report the same horrors, but we won't believe them. We'll see no guilt in them, only love. Because that is all that's in our mind, love. We look upon a world that we have forgiven and see not a scrap of guilt anywhere. And we just know things about the script. And we just feel and know exactly what to do and how to be truly helpful and loving to victims and victimizers alike. And we see no difference between them. Everything is God's son. We never have to think what to do. Loving and effective action just flows through us. And we know that none of the actions or decisions matter. Only the love that inspires loving action in the dream matters. But none of us are in the real world. We're far too terrified of love to have it shine constantly in our minds. We can join with it for short periods before the ego brings the raucous shrieking back into our mind to protect our individuality from the Holy Spirit. We forget the love and are back to doing and deciding everything as an ego. Now, the good news is we don't have to be in the real world with no judgment or guilt to hear the song of thanksgiving and love of the Holy Spirit and to have loving, effective action flow through us. But we do have to join with the Holy Spirit in the same way as we do with our forgiveness formulas. We have to look at the problem the way it is rather than the way we have set it up. The solution of the Holy Spirit is not the answering of our question. The question is the problem. The problem is the indecision and fear. The question, the indecision, and the fear is only there because we're choosing to be separate. That's the problem. The Holy Spirit is not the answer to all questions. He is the end of all questions. So the solution is to choose to join the Holy Spirit, but this is not a course in the positive. To choose the Holy Spirit, we must first say no to the ego's interpretation. You must let your question go. A judgmental or opinionated question has no answer because it is already a statement. It doesn't want the real answer and won't hear it. You must let the belief that the question is important go. If you are joined with the Holy Spirit's love in your mind, it doesn't matter which job you choose. You won't need it to make you happy because your happiness comes from the joining with Him in your mind. And no decision you make can hurt you because nothing can take the love and peace of the Holy Spirit from you, no matter what happens in the dream. So the question isn't important. Only by acknowledging that the question isn't important can we shut down the noise in our head to reconnect with the Holy Spirit's love and stillness. And only then can we return forwards in the sure knowledge that it doesn't matter. Now, the good news is that you don't have to be utterly without judgment, fear, or the belief that the question is important. You okay, Lloyd?
Okay, 1 sec.
Technical hitch.
It's going well, Keith.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
I can hear you just fine, Keith.
Ah, good. Thank you, George.
I don't know what it is. Second now.
I'm gonna turn this
No,
off
okay, we're just going to turn off our other
just to see.
Bose speakers here to see if it will help.
We can hear you now, Stephanie.
Sharon, I can't hear you either.
Oh, you can't hear Sharon. I can hear
All
Sharon.
right, we're having an issue. So you know what I'm going to do here now, because I want to save the integrity of this recording. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'm going to start another recording. So it's all good here. Just give me a moment.